The creaking of wooden boards and the gentle lapping of waves against a ship's hull might evoke images of adventure and exploration. But for some unfortunate souls in maritime history, these sounds were the prelude to a horrifying ordeal. Keel hauling, a punishment so severe it could make even the most hardened sailors quake in their boots, stands as a testament to the brutal justice meted out on the high seas. As the famous 18th century English writer Samuel Johnson once remarked, being in a ship is being in a jail with a chance of being drowned, a sentiment that took on a far more sinister meaning for those facing this dreaded punishment. This practice, which originated in the Dutch Navy during the 17th century, involved dragging a sailor underneath the ship's keel from one side to the other. The term itself comes from the Dutch word kalen, meaning to haul under the keel. While often associated with piracy, keel hauling was primarily used by naval forces as a form of disciplinary action against their own crew members. The Dutch, known for their naval prowess during the golden age of the 17th century, were particularly infamous for employing this brutal method of maintaining discipline aboard their ships. One of the earliest recorded instances of keel hauling dates back to 1622, when a Dutch sailor named Pilgrim Willem was sentenced to this punishment for striking his captain. The incident occurred aboard the ship Hollandia while it was anchored off the coast of present-day Jakarta, Indonesia. Willem survived the ordeal, but his fate served as a chilling warning to other sailors contemplating insubordination. The Dutch Articles of War, published in 1629 by Stadtholder Frederick Henry, Prince of Orange, officially codified keel hauling as a punishment for severe infractions such as mutiny, theft, or sodomy. These articles remained in effect for over 2 centuries, shaping the harsh disciplinary culture of the Dutch Navy. The process of keel hauling was as meticulous as it was merciless. The condemned would be stripped naked and tied with ropes, often with weights attached to ensure they sank deep enough to pass under the ship. Crew members would then haul the unfortunate soul from one side of the vessel to the other, dragging them beneath the barnacle-encrusted hull. In some cases, a wooden board or mattress was sometimes tied to the victim's back in a token effort to provide some protection. However, this often proved futile against the razor-sharp barnacles and the crushing pressure of the water. For those subjected to this torment, the experience was nothing short of nightmarish. Captain Charles Johnson, in his 1724 book A General History of the Pirates, vividly described the ordeal. The delinquent shall be stripped stark naked and a rope tied about his middle, with which he shall be hoisted up to the end of the yardarm, from whence he shall be violently let fall into the sea and drawn underneath the ship's keel. Johnson's account, while sensationalized in parts, provides a rare contemporary description of the punishment and has significantly influenced our modern understanding of maritime punishments. During the golden age of piracy, the chances of survival were slim. If the victim didn't drown, they faced the risk of being shredded by the sharp barnacles and other marine growth on the ship's hull. Those who did survive often emerged with severe lacerations, broken bones, and internal injuries. Many succumbed to their wounds or subsequent infections in the days following the punishment. In fact, naval records from the Dutch East India Company suggest that the mortality rate for keel hauling could be as high as 50%, making it one of the most feared punishments at sea. One particularly harrowing account comes from the journal of John Tunger, a naval chaplain who witnessed a keel hauling aboard the HMS Assistance in 1676. He wrote, "In a moment he was drawn from one side of the ship under the keel to the other, by which he was so grated all over his body that it was almost impossible for him to recover." Tunger's eyewitness account provides a rare glimpse into the reality of this punishment, far removed from the romanticized depictions in later literature and film. While the Dutch Navy was notorious for its use of keel hauling, other European navies also employed this brutal punishment. The Russian Navy, under Tsar Peter the Great, adopted the practice in the early 18th century as part of its efforts to modernize along Western lines. In 1705, Peter himself witnessed the keel hauling of several sailors accused of theft aboard a ship in the port of Van. The Tsar reportedly remarked that it was an excellent means to maintain discipline. This imperial endorsement ensured that keel hauling remained a part of Russian naval discipline well into the 19th century. Surprisingly, keel hauling was never officially sanctioned by the British Royal Navy, although unofficial instances were reported. Admiral John Byng, writing in his memoirs in the mid-18th century, mentioned witnessing a keel hauling aboard a British ship, though he condemned the practice as barbarous and un-English. The French Navy too largely abstained from the practice, considering it too barbaric even by the standards of the time. The famous French naval officer and explorer Louis-Antoine de Bougainville wrote, in his journal in 1766, "Such cruelty is unworthy of a civilized nation and serves only to harden the hearts of men." Keel hauling, while most famously used by the Dutch, was not limited to one nation. Although pirates generally favored quicker methods of execution like walking the plank or marooning, keel hauling was sometimes a threat used to maintain order on pirate ships. This brutal punishment was feared for its extreme nature, and pirates, known for their ruthlessness, used the concept of it to instill terror in their crews, ensuring that discipline was maintained, often without the need for execution. The Pirate Code of Bartholomew Roberts, one of the most successful pirates of the 18th century, had no specific mention of keel hauling. Instead, Roberts, who was active from 1719 to 1722, opted for more practical punishments like marooning or flogging. Roberts' Articles of Agreement stated that anyone who deserted the crew or committed theft would face marooning or death. Roberts, known for his ruthless discipline, marooned several crew members who defied his orders, but the act of keel hauling was generally avoided as a direct punishment among pirates. One infamous pirate who allegedly did engage in keel hauling was Edward Lowe, notorious for his sadistic tendencies. Active in the 1720s, Lowe's cruelty became the stuff of legend, and he was said to have keel-hauled captives from merchant ships he plundered. One account describes Lowe forcing the captain of a captured vessel off the coast of Newfoundland in 1723 to walk the plank, allegedly for refusing to reveal the location of hidden treasure. While sensationalized stories like these contributed to Lowe's infamous reputation, it's important to note that much of what we know about him comes from secondhand reports. Pirate folklore, which often exaggerates the brutality of its subjects, helped cement the idea of Lowe as the epitome of pirate cruelty. Despite its association with piracy, keel hauling wasn't without its critics even in the 18th century. In 1749, the French philosopher Montesquieu condemned the practice in his influential work, The Spirit of the Laws. Montesquieu argued that keel hauling should be abolished universally, calling it contrary to humanity. His criticisms reflected the growing influence of Enlightenment thinking, which increasingly championed humanitarian principles and the development of more humane forms of punishment. However, despite such moral opposition, the practice continued well into the 19th century in some navies, including the Russian Navy. The Dutch Navy, once a prominent force in maritime history, is where keel hauling truly gained its notorious reputation. This punishment became so infamous that it was recorded in official naval records. However, by the 19th century, public outcry and growing disapproval led to its gradual disappearance from naval practices. The final recorded instance of keel hauling in the Dutch Navy occurred in 1853 aboard the frigate USS Fro. The victim, a sailor named Johannes Franken, survived the ordeal but sustained severe injuries, fueling public outrage. This incident was a significant turning point in the practice's abolition, both in the Netherlands and across the globe. In Russia, Keel hauling was officially abolished in 1864 as part of broader naval reforms under Tsar Alexander II. Russia had been one of the last holdouts in the use of this cruel practice, and the law changes of the mid-19th century reflected the growing shift toward more modern, less barbaric methods of discipline in naval and military forces. Even though keel hauling itself was largely phased out by the late 19th century, the legacy of this brutal punishment lived on. The idea of dragging a person beneath the hull of a ship, exposed to the sharp barnacles and violent forces of the sea, persisted as one of the most horrifying forms of execution in the public imagination. As a symbol of the extreme measures used to maintain discipline and control, it became emblematic of a time when discipline at sea often came at the cost of basic human decency. Those who survived the ordeal were often left with lasting scars, both physical and psychological. The severe lacerations caused by the barnacles, the crushing pressure of the water, and the immense pain suffered by the condemned created a lasting trauma for those who managed to survive. Survivors often found themselves incapable of returning to a normal life. Many were unable to continue in service due to their injuries, while others were left mentally scarred from the experience. Keel hauling was a punishment that had few survivors. Those who endured it often paid a high price for their insubordination. As reports of its brutality spread, the punishment became a powerful tool of psychological warfare. While the practice may have been officially outlawed in many countries, it became a terrifying part of naval and pirate lore. Its legacy, like many other brutal punishments of the past, lived on as a haunting reminder of a darker time in history. During the golden age of piracy, the very threat of keel hauling was enough to keep most pirates in line. The terror it inspired among those who heard the stories acted as a powerful deterrent to insubordination. Even when pirates did not face keel hauling directly, the mere mention of it sent a chilling message to the crew. Pirates knew that their lives, already fraught with peril, could be ended in the most gruesome manner imaginable. Although the practice of keel hauling became a relic of the past by the late 19th century, it continues to resonate with the imagination of historians and the public. The horror of being dragged beneath the keel of a ship, subjected to the mercy of the sea, remains one of the most enduring images of maritime cruelty. The psychological terror it instilled in sailors and the reputation it cemented for naval punishments are forever etched into the collective memory of history. As we look back on the history of maritime discipline and punishment, we see the grim evolution of punishment at sea, from the infamous methods used in the age of piracy to the more modern approaches to maintaining order and discipline in naval forces. The era of keel hauling stands as a dark testament to a time when the world of seafaring was far more dangerous, and the cost of insubordination was often paid with blood.